Hello, everybody, and welcome. This month is actually a new series on scaling partner success. So my name is Shannon Howard. I'm the Director of Customer and Content Marketing at Intellum, usually located in North Carolina, but this week I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to introduce our guest here to you in a moment. But just want to give you just some context for this webinar, this series, the things that we're going to be talking about. So I'm so excited that Kevin is our first guest for this series, because a couple years ago I had asked Kevin, when you're looking to learn about partner training or partner education, where do you go? Who do you learn from? And he was saying at the time, usually you look at customer education, you look at partner marketing, and you try to find a blend between the two, right? Because training, educating, enabling our partners is just so different than educating and training our customer base, right? Their motivations are different. There's different types of partners. There's a lot of complexity. And so that's what this series is about, is if you have a partner network, or if you're thinking about growing through partner and channel sales, or if you've been tasked as a customer education team with also educating partners, that's what this series is going to be about. And so today we're going to talk about really starting from the beginning, is building, and you'll kind of see that over time, different ways of thinking about and looking at partner training and education depending on your partner audience and your stage of maturity where you're at. So before we jump into content here, just some quick housekeeping. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded. It'll automatically show up actually on the page that you're on right now. It'll be here after the webinar. So if you have to hop off at some point, you want to come back and take some more notes, you can do that. There is a Q&A box. So underneath your video, there's a Q&A box. So that's a great place. Kevin's open to questions, not just at the end, but as we're going. So if you have questions, we also love to hear from you. So if you want to let us know you're here, where you're calling in from, if you just want to say hi and engage with us in the chat, we'd love to hear from you there. Also underneath the video, you're going to find a section called feedback. And so that's an opportunity for you to just give us some feedback on how this session went, what you like, things that you're interested in learning about, right? This is a new series, and we really want to help you learn about partner training and education, what you need to know, navigating the nuance and complexity. So let us know what it is that you're interested in hearing about. And so I'm going to let Kevin introduce himself, share a little bit about his background, just to provide us with some context, right, of where have you been, where are you now, and what can we hope to learn today.
Amazing. Thanks, Shannon. I'm super excited to be here. Obviously, always grateful for the opportunity to talk about partner education, but obviously, grateful for this whole series of webinars. Because again, Shannon, to your point, there's not a ton of discourse happening about that interesting, unique intersection of customer education, but also partner enablement, partner education, partner validation, etc. So I'll move super quick through my introduction because I'm excited to talk about the actual kind of meat and potatoes of this session. But I'm in Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. Wife, 2 toddlers. Our black lab Sully. We named him after who we wanted as an Irish drinking buddy in a Boston dive bar. So that's Sully. Love traveling, like microbreweries, hole in the wall restaurants, that type of stuff. I'm a project management professional, or certified project management professional from the PMI. In a previous life, I hosted the Agency Unfiltered podcast. I was interviewing, owners, founders, executives of the managed services providers in the HubSpot ecosystem to talk about what it's like to actually, grow and scale services business. And so you can find that on Spotify or wherever you check out your podcast apps. Big Dave Matthews Band fan. It's a little divisive, but you can't not say it. And today I currently lead the customer education and community teams and programs at Airtable. 2 other variables here that we'll work through today. First off, 1 p.m. Eastern is right when the sun really hits me through this bay window. And so, we'll work through some shadows and I'll take on the heat. The other variable is there's some work going on in my house upstairs. And so hopefully you guys aren't being treated to some of those extraneous sounds. All right, let's get into it quick. First, we'll use the session today to talk about those key differences and where and how customer education and partner education contrast, how to align your training initiatives with the partner needs, either identified by the partners themselves and or your own business, how to quantifiably measure the impact of your efforts, and then actually how to leverage partners themselves, feedback capture, but collaborative creation of some of this educational content too. And then just really quickly, it's worth calling out that even though there are some distinct differences between customer education and partner education, a lot of what we've established process-wise, methodology-wise, framework systems, everything that we have, stood up for customer education still applies to the partner side, right? And so we don't necessarily dive into like our instructional design methodologies or like how we systemize or standardize curriculum development efforts. What's the certification experience within Airtable Academy? What's our format and structure? And like, it's not the focus of today's conversation, but certainly happy to dig into any of that, if those come up in the questions panel, but just flagging that, we go in a different direction today, but if folks want to chat more about any of that, we certainly can. And then just 30 seconds on Airtable. I find it's helpful context, right? No two academies are the same. Products are the same. Learning audiences are the same. And so Airtable is a software. It's a no-code app platform. It's designed to help accelerate, your most critical business processes, right? And so building a solution for a critical problem doesn't have to be solved only by expensive software engineers, nor do you have to go through these super laborious, long-tailed procurement processes for point solutions. With a no-code platform, you can bring the ownership of solutioning a problem to those on the front lines, those closest to the problem. No software or coding experience required. And it's a Lego kit. It's meant to apply to a wide range of use cases. Product ops, marketing ops, project management are some really popular ones. Marketing, campaign management, etc. And as Airtable Academy can attest, customer education is also another great business function that is powered by Airtable. Cool. Quickly, Airtable Academy launched this past summer to all of our Airtable users. We are closing in on maybe 45,000 or so total course enrollment. We just issued our 2,000th certification this month as well. So at the end of our fiscal year, it's a great milestone. There's, learning paths that are made up of courses, and they build into 2, soon 3 certification exams. And then here's just like a quick look at how we structure it. There's a few dozen courses, again, organized by learning path. Those learning paths are, aligned with key personas within the Airtable product. And so, nothing wildly against the grain here structurally. Maybe it's a process similar to a lot of folks on the call today. But again, just to give you all the context into Airtable and Airtable Academy. Now, maybe you've noticed I didn't say partner a ton on the Airtable experience. And that's because prior to Airtable, I had spent the last 8 years helping build and scale HubSpot Academy. Specifically, and like where my primary focus was for the agency partner and then the services partner ecosystem, right? Those managed service providers. And so over those 8 years, we saw an immense amount of growth in a couple different slices and dimensions, right? Total team size, total certifications offering, what learning personas that we supported, the level of complexity or difficulty to the content, the languages and regions we supported, how ingrained we were to other departments and teams across the business. And so we saw an immense amount, of growth and scale of that program over my time there. And because I was, initially, aligned or like sent over to the partner education to incubate a partner education strategy, that's where the genesis of today's conversation was started, and where we discovered it being such an interesting talking point, right, or discussion to have. And so, again, all of that to be said, customer education and partner education are not the same, right? Maybe there's some underlying frameworks and creation processes. Fundamentally, though, they're different, right? And why I love partner education so much is because it's uniquely positioned to drive a ton of value for your business, but your partners' businesses, and the shared customers that you have together, right? And so if anybody joining today is coming from like a partner enablement or partner marketing function, you already know that there's like an immense amount of variables that drive the decisions you have to make around delivery mechanisms and channels for partner comms, for partner education, for partner enablement, et cetera, right? What's our platform? What's our tech stack? Where does this message land on the partner journey? What's the urgency and or relevancy to our partners, right? What is our capacity, right? What are the business goals for us to get this message or training, right, or enablement, piece of content out to these partners? What's the sensitivity of the messaging? What are the requirements from like a governance or compliance perspective? What's the rate of change? Like how sensitive is it to like a just-in-time training or something more evergreen? So like there's a ton of variables here at play. However, partner education specifically threads the needle for a lot of these things, right? And so over my time at HubSpot and just throughout my time building partner education programs, it can significantly reduce partner ramp time and just like their speed to being productive in your ecosystem, right? You're not just building a partner onboarding flow, you're evolving it to everboarding, so you can map education across the entire partner journey. It's an accelerator for tied revenue, right? Or revenue of partner attached opportunities or customers. It improves the quality of performance of your partners, which is a leading indicator into customer retention of shared customers, right? You're bringing these partners into key values and plays and frameworks that may have already been proven out by your team, right? Here is how we run effective kickoff calls. Here is how we run effective discovery. Here is how we run successful onboarding programs, right? You're bringing partners into that. It's consistency and messaging across all partners, right? You're not hoping your partner engagement manager, like your partner CSM, if there's many of them, are they all telling the partners the same thing in the exact same way? So consistency and scalability, right? Alignment, it's objective validation, and we'll get into that. But you're not just playing favorites and bringing business to the partners you enjoy working with, but it's actual an objective measurement of who knows the concepts, who can apply the concepts, and then kind of as a secondary item to that objective nature, it's also unbiased as a mechanism for attaching and referring partners to opportunities. Shannon, I'll get off my podium there for a moment, but anything else to add there from your lens or from what you've seen?
So I know we talked earlier, there's a lot of different types of partners, and you were talking about managed services partners, and also I think we're kind of like referral reseller partners, right? People who are selling on behalf. And I like that you mentioned onboarding, because I think same thing in customer education, right? Is we tend to focus on just kind of that first experience, right? We think about implementation and onboarding, but not always necessarily how are we keeping people up to speed, right? So as our product develops, as we're releasing new features, as the platform changes, how are we keeping our customers or partners up to speed on those changes so that they can effectively sell and service our platform? So I like that you're focusing on that holistic life cycle, and then you pointed out some of these things that do make it different, right? There is a lot of nuance, and we'll talk about it. The motivations are a little different.
And that's the other, it's like I come into these conversations with the bias of what my experience in partnerships is. But again, it's not going to be the same for everyone in attendance here. I think a lot of the value adds or the benefits that we have listed here are applicable to a fairly wide, like diverse range of partner ecosystems. But yeah, again, very much leaning towards, the SaaS environment, like SaaS products and those partners, and then like value-added resellers, services providers, implementation service providers, those experiences. But again, I know that there's more partnerships, types and programs that we can talk about. So again, to kind of recap that contrast, customer education here on the left, most often, right? Not every time, but more common than not, customer education programs exist to help quicken the time to value for new customers, right? It may skew product education focused, and so it's fairly prescriptive as like a guided tour through your product, right? It's normally focused on the early users of the tool, newer customers. So it's foundational and introductory and some of the concepts and some of the workflows within your product. Again, if you're SaaS, the strategies and frameworks that you're teaching your customers are, again, driven by your product. Oftentimes it's a one-to-one match. They're created for like those primary users, those primary learning audiences and personas. And there should be, a trickle-down effect on the impact of education on revenue and retention to your customers, right? We see that users and customers that engage with customer education programs are more successful in the tool and are more likely to renew, if not expand and grow their account over time. And so if we take the partner side and how those program components change, and again, what those nuances or differences are, right? Sure, maybe we want to quicken the time to value for new partners, but it's really an enablement tool for creating long-term value for your shared customers, right? So more effective partners will yield more successful shared customers, right? The services engagements that they're bringing to your shared customers. You pull back on the focus of a more prescriptive walkthrough and actually instead focus on a more practical application of your product, right? Oftentimes, partners, as they move through their partner journey, become experts in the tool, right? They're super proficient. They're very much experts on how to navigate and how to execute within your product. And so really partners want to see like real world practical application, right? Like what does this concept look like in practice for a real or hypothetical customer, right? You move away from foundational concepts into things that are more, deep, technical, complex, right? Again, partners oftentimes I found are interested and eager to really expand, like really push the boundaries of what a software product can do. You're not just teaching them the strategies of the product, but the strategies and frameworks that are executed by your team, right? Oftentimes, partner training starts to align more so to your internal training, like sales rep training or CSM training, than it does the customer education arm, right? Because you want partners to be an extension of your tool, your company, your brand. And so you want to just enroll them to the concepts and the approaches that you have found to be successful for your own teams, right? We planted the seed about collaborative content creation a few slides ago, but the best partner education programs invite in partners to the creation process and let them be the educators alongside your education team. And the impact of revenue is not just realized by your company, but also your partner's company, again, your shared customers. So again, Shannon, to your point, there's some nuances and some differences, but there's not a ton you have to change to your creation processes to account for these nuances, right?
Yeah, I think the key here is really scale, right? Customer education in general, we're thinking about how do we scale, supporting our customers, and then the same with our partners, which is not just scaling how we serve our partners, but also how those partners serve our customers, grow our revenue, right, grow our business. So definitely like a huge scale opportunity for companies.
And so whether it's customer education or partner education, when you're getting going, the first question is like, well, what do we need to create, right? Like how do we start? Where do we actually begin with our process, right? So there's a framework that I've used for partner education specifically, but it's just worth noting that like partner content prioritization additionally leans on the similar inputs as customer education. So don't think of this as a replacement for, but as an add-on to, right? So like, yeah, your product roadmap is going to inform, right, a lot of this. The gaps in the customer experience today, right? The emergence of new tactics or trends on how to execute within your product. Like those are things that customer education is going to support, but you equally need to enable and empower partners for. The one nuance here too on that, and what makes it a little tricky, is the timing, right? Like customers need education on a new product, let's say, at the time of launch, right? Hey, everybody's an AI company now. Hey, we've launched the new AI product. And so here's the course that gets you up to speed on the AI product. However, partners don't need it at the launch moment, right? Ideally, they have it before the launch moment, so they're prepared and equipped to support their customers and their active prospects, right? Much like probably how you're training and enabling your internal team. So it's the timing there that's interesting. But so with that said, here's the framework that I use for prioritization on partner education. On the x-axis here, you see customer demand. Y-axis, you see what I call partner saturation, right? So for customer demand, right, it's really, and again, services provider lens here, but it's a service that a lot of customers are looking for and or they're struggling to execute without like a partner or without additional support. Maybe it's bandwidth and they have budget, or maybe it's just like a really, really tricky kind of strategy to apply in your tool. But that's customer demand, right? The appetite of the customer base for a given service. Partner saturation is the amount of partners that either do deliver that service or at least say they can deliver their service, right? Going back to like objective validation, very different. Partners that say they can, oh yeah, I can migrate off that platform into this platform, versus like which ones are doing it well, doing it against the criterion requirements you would hope to see. So anyways, customer demand and partner saturation. And so just quickly as we build this out, if it's low demand, low saturation, probably not a pressing priority for you and the team, right? Now, if you fall in one of these, like, well, it's high in one of those two categories, high in customer demand or high in partner saturation, like, okay, now we're actually going to start running it through our prioritization framework. Now we're actually going to give it legs and whatever your sprint planning or roadmap planning process looks like. But as you all can imagine, the cream of the crop here are the services and things that are in high customer demand, and you have too many partners that say they can do it. And we need to cut through and know exactly which ones can do it at the highest level or the highest bar, right? Depending on the volume of that top right quadrant, that's when you can start to, fill in your sprint or your team's capacity with those, I guess, orangey boxes. But Shannon, have you seen a similar sort of framework or anything you've done different from like a prioritization lens?
I like this. I was actually thinking Katie Bernal is speaking next month, and she built out partner education at alarm.com. And we were talking about this of how do you prioritize the content? Because there really are a million things that you could do, right? And so how do you think about prioritizing that? And I think this is a great framework. Anything like this where you can be looking at what is the interest from customers and what is the impact for partners, looking at like revenue potential and impact. So we had talked about looking at the highest performing segments of your partners and what is it that they need to know, where can you kind of unlock more revenue opportunities for the business. So I think thinking about that, right, that there really are, in making our peace with, we cannot teach and educate on everything. That's true for customer education, partner education, internal learning and development, whatever we're doing. We're just not going to be able to do it all. So where can we make the most impact? And I like using a framework like this is helpful to be more objective than just the squeaky wheel gets the grease, the loudest partner gets what they want.
Yep. No, it's the revenue piece is so important. It's a good point. And like when we're talking about customer demand, it's, well, how do you measure that, right? Is it a quantity of customers that have identified this as an issue for their business? Or is it weighted by the total contract value of the customers that are in demand of that service, right? So yeah, I think, again, the most effective programs are anchoring their decisions to revenue. I saw one quick question, which I think is super interesting. So we'll address it quick and we'll go to the next slide. But vendors are trying to grow their business through partner relationships. However, partners often work with many vendors to grow their big business, right? I think you oftentimes see vendor agnostic. Hey, we'll work with whatever platform is best for any given prospect or client. They don't put all their eggs in the basket of a single vendor. So how do you find the balance there? Listen, it might be a little more, maybe it's not as quantifiable as a measure, but are vendors going to skew towards recommending their customers that have their business in mind? They're actively educating them. They're getting their team scalably, sustainably better at using your product, right? You're applying to a diverse range of services and customer types, right? Are you helping them establish new revenue lines, right? Hey, I provide services A, but now there's a whole learning track and learning path in the whole educational content catalog that allows me to introduce this as a service offering too, right? So it's kind of like the goodwill nature of customer education. And if you're building it with your partners in mind and growing their businesses in mind, will that be an attractive, component to why maybe they recommend you as a vendor to their customers versus another? But cool. So all of this to be said as well, I found at least that partner education is more straightforward. I don't know, easier. Is it ever easy? But straightforward, definitely. Simple. Now we'll stay with straightforward. It's more straightforward to create than customer education. And there's a few distinct reasons why I find that to be true. So for the first, with partner content, oftentimes you can just cut the fluff, right? Again, with customer education, it's new users. You're trying to quicken the value for new customers. And so, yeah, you oftentimes have to spend time on like a value proposition module or like help them understand why you're teaching them the concepts you're teaching them, or like what is in it for them on why they would want to use this element of your tool, etc. However, partners are already committed to and bought into your ecosystem. They probably already understand the why. And so we can kind of move right beyond that. And instead now you can focus more so on the how, right? And the what. Again, practical application of the concepts, not trying to justify why they should be interested in learning those concepts, right? So you're starting this book on chapter 4. I don't know how many chapters are, but you're starting it. And that oftentimes, yields efficiency gains from a creation perspective. The second item is repurposed material, right? Again, we're trying to enroll partners on methodologies and strategies and frameworks that our internal teams are already using and using successfully. And so there's already, ideally, a substantial catalog of existing internal enablement and internal training resources, right? So the steps of your process, what good to great looks like, templates for executing that process, competitive intelligence, right, that comes up in the sales process, how to give handoffs or like walkaways to the person you're talking to. If all of that already exists, well, that's the foundation for partner education. You just obviously need to scrub some sensitive stuff, I'm sure, and then apply the partner angle. But again, when we talk about what chapter you're starting on, right, you already have the foundational materials to repurpose. The last item here, again, we've talked about it quickly a few times, but it's collaboration for creation, right? I've heard partners say this time and time again. Maybe you all have as well, but they want to learn from each other, right? Yes, they want to, I'm sure, hear from the company and the vendor, but they want to understand the lived-in experience from other partners, what they find to be successful and effective, and how are they driving revenue for themselves and for their customers. And so, yeah, right, the best partner programs are inviting partners in. They're the subject matter experts, right? They have industry experience or vertical experience or specific business function experience that your team oftentimes won't have, like the same depth or level of knowledge. And so, yeah, you tap the experts from your partner network and give them the spotlight and the opportunity to build educational content. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And so, again, why we do this, right? I guess I jumped the gun on the slide, but they have product knowledge and expertise that, surpasses yours potentially. Subject matter expert bandwidth internally. I don't know, solutions engineers, solutions consultants, your implementation teams, your architects, like many customer education programs involve them for content support, but their bandwidth is tight and they have quotas and they have, priorities and initiatives. And so you can route a lot of that collaboration to partners, right? And then lastly, they have that lived in experience for being a partner. All of this to be said, partners want to hear from other partners, as we've talked about. And so, okay, how do we identify the partners to invite in, right? And do so in like an objective way, and to make sure that you're focusing and emphasizing a diverse slate of perspectives, right? And so, yeah, you anchor on key performance metrics of your program, right? Which partners have the highest customer retention, sell the most in our reseller program, et cetera, et cetera. If you have some sort of like tiering or leveling system, right? Maybe the highest tier partners get first crack at being invited into this process, right? Again, is there industry or vertical or service offering expertise that is a primary use case, going back to the customer demand quadrant? And so which partners have that expertise? Probably the easiest way to get started is to, invite CSMs and your account executives, your partner facing points of contact, like allow them to nominate partners that they can validate to be great. Again, focus on diversity and diverse perspectives, which partners are which ones are, even interested and have the capacity and availability to support. And then who actually has like the technology and the setup and the ability to deliver, right? Hey, our education program's primarily video. What's your recording setup look like? What's your microphone, your video, your recording space? Like, there's a technical component too. Sharon, anything you'd add there on any other measures of identifying good fits for that process?
I like all of those. And I think figuring out, I guess, what is it that we need or want most? And that's where I think sometimes those nominations or those specializations can be helpful. I was also thinking, and I think we know this, sometimes our subject matter experts are not always the greatest at teaching the thing that they know. Like knowledge and being able to communicate that knowledge is often different. So thinking about who are those partners who are really good at communicating and teaching. I also want to pull in, Monica asked a question, which is, when you were talking about collaborating in this like bullet point of, and your partners want it, like they want to hear. I think we all, when we're learning, I think this big part of social learning is we learn something and then we want to ask questions about our unique experience. Okay, yes, I understand fundamentally this concept. Here's my industry, or here's my niche, or here's what I'm running into. And then to be able to talk to someone else with that lived experience who can say, not just, well, in theory, I think you could probably do this, but to have someone else say, yeah, I ran into that with a customer last year and here's how I navigated that. I think it's so helpful to have someone like that. Monica said, when it comes to selling, I think that our partners need the coaching. How do you combine academy with real life feedback, like live training, cohorts, things like that?
Yep. It's a great point, right? Oftentimes when we think about like an academy, it's hosted in an LMS. Oftentimes we're talking about self-paced, on-demand training. Maybe it's video, maybe it's text, right? And so, yeah, I think an important component to this is, well, then how do you supplement that for like the next level of learning, right? Like better access to coaching, practice, more direct feedback. And so, yeah, I think Monica, in your parentheses, like, yeah, that's exactly how you can execute it. I think like the perfect solution is dependent on your partner ecosystem and their needs, your team's capacity and structure, what academy offerings you have today. But yeah, I think supplementing the on-demand modules with live training, right? Office hours, right? Q&A sessions, 100%. You could do cohort-based learning, certainly, right? At HubSpot, we had partner exclusive like boot camps that were multi-session facilitated, like small group learning. And so, yeah, the biggest benefit of that was being able to learn from each other, practice, but what goes well, what have you tweaked on this? How do you take your own personal take on it? So that's huge. And then, I think tying academy into community is critical as well. Having private spaces in your community. So maybe it's not like live over a Zoom, but you can still capture some of that like live coaching, additional perspective, allowing the peer-to-peer, partner-to-partner conversation to occur as well. Right.
I also, not to be the person who brings up AI for the first time on this call, but there's also now technology like AI coaching, right? Where you could start to incorporate things like that, where when we're thinking about scale, there's only so much that we can do in real time. There's only so many videos that one person could review to provide some feedback. So can we make use of, and who knows, like maybe you can get creative with Gong with your partners for, and have some like alerts and things set up in there. But there are AI tools now that could be incorporated for something like that. Kim had a question too that I think is relevant here before we move on to the next session. Do you have any recommendations or maybe what have you done to reward partners for their participation in collaborating on content?
Yeah, so just two quick thoughts on that. First off, folks that go through the actual educational content itself, right? We structure this to then build into like a certification or credentialing experience. And so those that can actually prove out their knowledge of the concepts and or their ability to execute those concepts, right? Maybe you have a multiple choice exam and then maybe and or that's paired with like a submission of a sample X or proof that you've done X. But anyways, that certification or credentialing experience would then award them with some sort of like badge, right? Certification could be a designation in your directory, partner directory. It can be how internal teams are asked to sort and filter to discover the right partner. It can be kits that they post on their LinkedIn to their networks, on their website. So, having that means of differentiation and acknowledgement is important. You could also have, the completion of learnings or the accomplishment of your certifications unlock additional benefits, right? Hey, you can't join these boot camps until you've, achieved that certification. Or you can't begin to, receive referral business for onboarding programs until you've shown that you've achieved the, onboarding playbook credential or something like that. So it's access, right? That's gated by learning. And then the means of distinction, differentiation, acknowledgement are two huge benefits that we see work great.
That's awesome. I think there's also in the customer advocacy side of things, I think you could apply some of that same stuff to partner advocacy. There's a persona that's the teacher, right? There are people who just love to share what they know. I think sometimes that in and of itself is great. So understanding what is it that motivates your partners, whether it is that listing in the directory or some swag or a special designation. There's also just a lot of benefit and advantage to them to being seen as a thought leader and an expert in their field. So all that's great.
The answer is always swag. That's true. The answer is always swag.
Always swag.
Hook them up.
Yes, but good swag. Like send a great we just got new sweaters, and they're super comfy. Like send some good stuff that you would not give to the Goodwill. Yeah.
One last note on this slide. I see some additional questions coming in, but just to close the loop on this one slide, when we talk about the how column is well, how do we identify partners to bring in? The other how is well, what does this look like in practice? I don't know if we have it on a slide, but it's just worth calling out that as the education team, you also want to alleviate the burden of curriculum development on these partners. So there is an art and a science to what collaboration with these partners looks like. And whatever the most effective, efficient way to extract, brain dump, just give me your knowledge. I'll run it through our instructional design methodology and our curriculum content creation templates and collaboration with our video production team. Like, take all that effort off of the partner, make it as easy as humanly possible for them to be a collaborator. Just one quick flag that I don't know if that surfaces in a slide, but just to call that out. Sweet. I do want to I think it's maybe 2 more slides. I see questions here and I want to get to them all. I think the most important thing, this probably goes for customer education too, but definitely for partners, is that you don't have to come out of the gate running. And maybe your customer education program is already running, but there very much is like a crawl, walk, run approach that you can take. And so, yeah, maybe regardless of the maturity of your customer education program today, maybe it's highly produced videos and they're super crisp and like it's just so well, a well-oiled machine and there's a ton of volume. Like, yeah, maybe to get started, the videos you record for partners a little more lo-fi, right? Or maybe they are just like, text heavy, like more text based, but there's some interactivity and some like, there's ways to do that too. But don't feel like you have to match the polish, right? Just to get going, especially if you're repurposing from internal assets and internal training, right? And then you're just like layering in partner supplements, right? Again, we talked about the certification experience could be multiple choice or like a practical assessment that's like a submission based component. Like, that doesn't have to be the case out of the gate. Maybe it's just a short form multiple choice exam and it doesn't skew overly rigorous. Like, that's okay to get started, right? The governance and how you maintain your certification as a certified partner. How long does the award last? Like, what do they have to prove quantifiably or qualitatively to maintain, right? Again, all of that, there's different levels of maturity. And then also where and how partner education integrates into your companies and into your businesses go to market, right? What do the comms look like for partners about the certification, about the education program, or anything else, right? How do you take educated partners and rely on that information for attach rates and referrals and nominations for CSMs of new customers that need X? Is it systematic and automatic? Is it AI powered, or is it a little manual and it's a process that we know will break? Like, that's okay to get started. And again, I think this mentality it goes way farther and way broader than just partner education, but worth calling it out through that partner specific lens, right? I think, Shannon, I saw the snap, so maybe you agree with this sentiment. But
okay, well, thinking about that go-to-market integration and thinking about not just what are we creating and how are we creating it, but how are we surfacing it to the people who need it when they need it is so important, and I think often overlooked. I also know that 12 people at least just took a screenshot of this slide, and so that you'll actually find a PDF of the slides underneath the video too. So if you were like, man, this is great and I want to apply this to my program, the slides are underneath the video.
And it's worth saying too, I think I had my LinkedIn handle at the very top, like my intro slide, but I was like super keen on keeping all of these boxes at 2 lines. And so if there's ever a point that somebody doesn't understand my consolidated snippet of text here, just chase me down. Or anything about this conversation today, always happy to talk more, but just worth flagging as well. Sometimes my abbreviations don't make sense beyond my own brain, right? The last thing I want to talk about, and then certainly we'll open it up to any and all questions, but naturally it's the reporting framework. And like, how do we want to show and prove out not just impact, but like a positive revenue, dollar amount based return on investment, right? Quantifiable impact for the business. And so as you go down the 5 rows, right, these are like the levels of reporting that I think your team can lean on to do this effectively. And so at the top, you have like creator capacity, right? The teams that we're, putting as responsible for building out our partner education, are they, filling their plates? Are they doing this at the rate that we need them to? What's the quantity of assets that we're rolling out as it's compared to like the capacity we'd want to expect from that team, right? Just productivity, right? You get down into like learner sentiment. So how are partners actually feeling and thinking and reacting to this content, right? You can capture that easily with like course enrollments or like CSAT, NPS, etc. Right? Then you get into like the actual learning experience for partners, right? Are they actually not just starting it, but engaging with it? Is it resonating to them? Are you seeing course completions result in course enrollments lead to course completions? How many total average courses are you seeing partners go through? Right. And so it's like, are you picking the right delivery methods and mechanisms and formats? Right. Then you get down to credentials growth. again, this is highly assumptive that you're attaching certifications or certificates to this program. I think I've kind of, it's been kind of woven throughout this narrative. I think that's an incredibly valuable, important piece of this. But you're going to measure that growth in credentials, total number of certificates awarded, average number of partners with a certificate, certified users per partner. There's a whole bunch of ways you can slice and dice that. But again, are they just engaging with your learning, but in a way that actually leads to an understanding and a synthesis of the concepts? And then this last row, which is the most long-tailed and depending on your systems architecture can be the hardest to prove out, but it's the impact on the business, right? So what does partner influenced revenue look like? And then how does it look when you add educated partners influence on revenue, either against the benchmark or what's the impact on educated versus what we'll say non-educated or non-certified partners, right? Do educated partners close more deals, right? Do they accelerate the close and win of opportunities that they're attached to or referred to? Do you see a faster time to value or completion of onboarding programs when a partner is educated versus not? What's the renewal rate or retention rate or account growth rate for when partners are certified or educated versus when they're not? And so like those are the types of data points and metrics that you want to be able to report on. And then that's what's going to, prove out the value of your program, but get it funding, more resourcing, increase team size. Like that's the growth lever for this type of program, right? Shannon, any additional thoughts on that?
I just like that you included kind of example KPIs and then what does it tell us and why this data? Because I think sometimes it's easy. There are really 100 metrics that you could measure around the success and health of your program, but it's really what are those ones that really matter, that tell the story that we need to be telling, and then what are those questions that we can ask of our data analysis team or our BI team, or like maybe we're doing the analysis and you're maybe using like an AI tool or something to help you analyze if you're not like the most data savvy, right? But to be able to say like, hey, my question is, do partners who completed this certification sell more? Do they have bigger deal sizes? Do they, is their deal velocity faster? Are they, are they generating more revenue for the business? If our hypothesis is that educated partners produce more revenue, have better customer retention rates, increase customer contract size, like, can we actually just ask questions of the data, right? So to know in advance, like, what are those questions that we're going to want to ask? I think this is a smart way of kind of spelling that out. So it's not just like, we're looking at lead generation or we're looking at number of certifications. I also wanted to ask you, like, why certifications? Because I feel like there's always this, I don't know, like, do we want to do a certification? And either we all feel pressure to create a certification, a big C, a little C certification, but why has that been such a cornerstone of the work that you've done?
Yep. Well, I think it's like you view certificates as an object. And if it's an object, it's measurable or filterable or sortable against whatever other data you're hopefully tracking in your systems, right? I won't go on my soapbox too much. At least in my experiences, I've worked with and I've built programs that use the lower C certification. I'm comfortable with that level of stakes as it relates to like building no code apps and solutions with Airtable. That's not the same for all other programs. And I know there's a contingency, there's a whole cohort of academies and customer education programs that believe firmly in capital C. They're totally different. But yeah, so that's where we land on that. However, certifications I found to be so valuable is because you're proving an understanding and or an application of what you need partners to know and be able to do. And you're not going to have that proof or that validation if you only have learning paths or courses or video modules by themselves, right? Listen, I'm a customer education professional. I believe highly in the work we do, but I also believe and understand and know that if somebody's watching and enrolling in one of our courses, they're listening to me at 200x and they're also multitasking. And so it's like, hey, you can go through all of the courses and I'm going to track the engagement there, but the certification is going to be that proof point in that object that's going to, help you measure that lowest row, the impact on the business. That's a great question.
Someone said at a roundtable recently, I don't care about completions. I care about changes in behavior, right? If learning is meant to drive behavior, then why are we only measuring completions? Why are we not actually looking at the behavior change? So completion could be helpful, right? To help us to understand Did we get to like the point at minute 5 and it's a 7-minute long video? Could we make it short? Those things are helpful in terms of how effective is our content? Are people enjoying it? But yeah, completions are not the end all be all.
It's a good point, right? Because you were like, hey, it's helpful, but is it the end all be all? And like, that's why you do want to track KPIs at all 5 of these levels, because wherever you're hurting the most or performing the weakest, like that should be what informs the program roadmap, we'll call it, or like the optimizations that you want to make to your program, right? So in tandem with your content roadmap, you should always have a program roadmap on like the fixes, or like, hey, here is what we're going to prioritize to fix the weakest link in our reporting framework, right? And like that could be a whole list of things depending on which one of those rows and which KPI in one of those rows is hurting you the most, right? So it's like, yeah, that was a perfect tip, and I agree wholeheartedly.
Did you want to kind of talk through these questions before we get to the Q&A?
For sure. Monica asks, on a systems perspective, do partner and customer academies live in the same platform? If not, how do you manage the search experience? So I wouldn't say, I mean, this is actually a good question to run through, like the crawl, walk, run framework, right? And so maybe crawling is like, yeah, they're 2 distinct systems. We're going to be crystal clear in our communication on the risks or the gaps that creates for our business and what the user experience is going to look like. I think that's totally okay to get started, right? And hey, we still want to funnel partners through customer education. Maybe achieving a tier or a designation within our program still requires them to achieve the customer education certificates, but then the partner training is in a separate platform, and so there's a whole systems and platform, and there's a lot of things that can drive that conversation. However, what I found to be most effective is a consolidated system, right, that houses both customer and partner education. Is that SAW coming through or no, Shannon? Is that?
That's the first time I've heard that.
That's a good one. It's a good one. I think they're cutting wood up there. But it's one system, and oftentimes systems can have partner education be hidden, right? You don't want to teach your customers like, hey, here's how you close deals of potential customers successfully. So you still want to have like a hiding visibility mechanism, and then you only make it visible to partners. Like that's the best scenario. And to your question, Monica, that's what solves the search issue, right? Because for partners, both sides of that program funnel into your federated search, right?
That's a good point of thinking about not just platform wise, like what is the most efficient for your team, right? Because some of that content, to your point, can be repurposed or is applicable to both audiences. And so you don't have to, it's so annoying to upload to 2 places. And then when the content gets updated, you've got to remember that it's in both places and update versus kind of dynamically segmenting your content based on audience, which many platforms can do. Good question to ask.
100%. I saw one come through. We'll touch on it. I could go back to the slide too, but I think it was like, hey, when we were talking about the benefits of partner education, like how does it speed up a partner's alignment to, I forget, like emerging trends or like strategies, or I forget exactly which one it was. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. I forget where it was, but it was enrollment to key values, methodologies, and plays, and like the speed in which that can happen, right? I think like a really a good example for this is if I'm a SaaS product, and for the longest time I've had one core product, but starting next year we're going to add a second. We're going to become a multi-product company, right? And all of our partners today, anchor their managed services offerings and their experiences and engagements to our singular product. But how do we want them to not only become product experts in the second product, but how do we want them to actually update their entire sales approach and their process and their playbooks to pitch a multi-product, like a consolidated offering, right? So that weaves into their marketing collateral, their sales conversations and their sales playbooks, the way in which they onboard their customers. Maybe it's how they like resource and organize and like set up their account teams to deliver the work. And like huge, fundamentally, just like huge changes. And so like that's what I'm talking about, in that you had to run that training for internal teams at like that type of shift. And so that can speed that whole process up for partners as well. I don't know, Shannon, if you've seen other examples, but that's one that came to mind for me.
Yeah, I think it's a good point of kind of the change management around things. And in the same way, I mean, if you think about expanding customers into maybe new modules of your product, you have to kind of introduce them to that and sell them on that. And I think that's something that's really different about partner education and training is you're not just teaching them about the product, but like why should you sell this product and why should you kind of incorporate this into your business? Because if they're content to just sell and service the one thing, like what is the motivation for them to then add this other thing? It's extra work for them. So how do we justify to them that extra work?
Yeah, change management's a great example, right? And that's something we talk about at Airtable a ton, right? And now, like, hey, to successfully, bring Airtable, to market in your account, like to your customer, right? Yeah, there's going to have to be some change management best practices and some like transformation conversations that have to happen. And we know that can be laborious and intensive, time intensive, task intensive. And so it's like, yeah, we want partners to be able to do that. How do they get aligned with our change management tenets or best practices, right? Cool.
Any other, I don't see questions in there right now, but this is your chance. If you have, here, I'll do the Q&A slide. Actually, I'm going to go back one slide on the deck here and just say, again, if you tuned in later or if you forgot, underneath this video is a little rate this section, and we want to hear from you, not just about this conversation. I know someone already said in the chat, hey, all those things, Kevin, that you said we're not going to talk about today, can we go back and talk about those in a future webinar, which we should.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of feedback we're looking for too. Is like, what is it that you need or want to know, right? Because a lot of us, we're learning as we go. This, there's no playbook today on how to do this. And it's changing. The game is changing on us with, AI, with our products changing and all of that. So please share your feedback. If you have a question, we've got a few more minutes here. You can throw it in the questions box. If you don't, I'll actually go back to Kevin, your intro slide, because you didn't say this, but you have your LinkedIn on the bottom there. So you can find Kevin on LinkedIn. He's very friendly and a great resource. So if you do want to connect with him afterwards, I would highly encourage that.
Yeah, please do. Happy to continue the conversation for anybody that's interested. I'm always open to folks that see it differently than I do. Or if there's anything that we've talked today that you're open to challenging, I love to hear how others are doing it specifically, and when it's different from how I've done it. So hoping to keep the conversation going with folks online. Yeah, come find me.
Awesome. All right, and I think we've answered kind of most questions in line with what we were talking about. So now I'll just let you all know, I mentioned this earlier, but Katie Bernal is going to be joining us next month, and we're going to be talking about starting a partner education program. So she started partner education at alarm.com and grew a pretty large team and pretty expansive team and remit there. So if this is something like you've been tasked and you're like, where do I start? We're going to talk about that next month and kind of build on what we've been talking about today. All right. Chris had a question just come in. How do you approach gathering sales buy-in when trying to show them the worth of partners and how the synergistic effect of having partners offers more value to customers? That's a great question.
And so it's like, hey, sales team, this is why you should look to bring partners into the sales process. I think oftentimes, again, if I'm just like generalizing or guessing, it's like, oh, well, how do I trust that the partners are ready to plug in at this stage of the sales process? Are they going to slow it down? How do I know that they're knowledgeable enough or effective? Are they aware of the process that we're trying to run? How can they align with me to close this deal urgently and actually deliver the work that I'm scoping, right? Like all of those are normally the concerns we hear from sales reps. The partner education playbook, educating partners in credentialing or certifying partners, is the defense against those complaints. It's like, hey, it's because we know, right, that they understand and have already used our playbooks, right? They know what our co-selling sales process looks like. They know what the expectations are when we bring, referred business into their pipeline. And so, again, I think that goes to the question about why certifications within this playbook. The other thing too, if you're on that last row of that reporting framework where you can show that when partners are attached to a deal, it closes faster, it closes for more dollar amounts, they stick on for multi-year engagements, like those are the data points that will win over sales as well, right? Like what's in it for them, right? Hey, you're going to achieve your quota faster, you're going to exceed your quota, and there's going to be no clawbacks, right? Because these types of customers stick around. So,
I think sometimes too with managed service partners, it kind of just depends on the agreement that your company has with their partners, but they might earn a commission for that co-selling opportunity, like selling those managed services in conjunction with a partner. So if we think about setting our customers up for success, sometimes those partners help us to set our customers up for success. Okay, we had two more. Let's see if we can eke these in. Often partners are interested in training. However, sometimes they avoid it. What are some ways that you've encouraged people to participate in training?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like how, like I forget the previous question. Maybe it was like incentivize or like acknowledge. And so, yeah, hey, you're going to receive this badge of differentiation, of distinction. This is how folks are going to find you in our directory. You need it to be listed in our directory, right? We see partners are referred to deals when they have this distinction on their company LinkedIn's or on their websites. Your access to these slew of benefits and additional programs within our partner program only when you achieve this credentialing or complete this training. Like I think gating benefits is a huge one, but then showing them and enrolling them on why it's so important from like a distinction, differentiation, and systems perspective, right? And they'll get Six Swag and recognition at your partner kick events and all that other stuff, right? So similar question to incentives. I think I saw one question too about gating partner content, and if it's like a good, like is that a benefit or like incentive to join the partner program? I would say yes, potentially. I would find that anchoring to your partner education program as a benefit, like, hey, this is the value proposition of joining ours. It probably requires you to have like a certain size, program or like, maturity of program. How big's the catalog? How diverse is the offerings? Is it only on demand? Are there live cohorts, instructor-led trainings, classroom training? So it's like, it depends on the maturity of the program. If you just have, hey, I'm crawling right now, I have one key learning path, it's just like the partner program essentials, like that, it might not carry enough weight. So I would say yes, but contingent on the size and maturity of the program.
I went to unmute myself and it double muted. I think that's all we have time for today. This has been amazing. I hope you will leave Kevin 5 stars below this video, but we're at the top of the hour. You're definitely getting some DMs. Like I can almost promise you that.
All right, DMs are open. All right, chat. DMs are open. All right.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin, for your time. Thank you, everybody who joined us today, asked some great questions. We look forward to continuing to explore this topic with you and hope to see you next month. All right. Bye for now.